Hector, welcome. Thrilled to have you here in our drum circle at Tambora Dialogues. So your work with Don Carvajal Coffee has inspired so many, and we really can't wait to dive into your story. So, as you know, we start with all our talks with a question about the personal and political. So how do you see the personal intersecting with the political in your journey?
It's funny because it's a conversation I've had this week a lot, but I typically stay out of the way from active things because I don't want to be a bystander of a stray situation, like a stray bullet. Um, Most of the time, I just kind of find what's within me and then what my vision is and what my community needs from my perspective. I'd look at myself growing up, I look at my family growing up, I look at my origin as a country, and then I just operate that way. And I just think about what affects me and people around me. I think people go so large, but they could do so little when you could go small and do so much. So that's really how I look at business and politics and personal and stuff like that. I typically stay out of the way, but I do stuff in my own lane, that I feel like I'm eligible to do. And I don't like to publicize what I do most of the time. Just like the podcast, I only talk about stuff that I feel eligible to speak on, coffee, culture, and business. That's what I do for a living, and that's what I think I feel comfortable with. You know what I mean? So that's how I approach him.
No, and I appreciate that, right? It's like, there are the things you have to like recognize your orbit, right? Here's your orbit and the things that you can control and the things that you can do, and that's what you focus on. And all the stuff that's going on in the world right now, that is what we all need to do, right? It's like, what can we do within our own community and for ourselves and our family? So I totally respect that. You've mentioned that the heart of your company is built on the three C's:
Mhm.
coffee, community, and culture. So I'm curious about like what life experiences or moments shape these as your core values.
I think majority of human beings can relate to that. And if you want to go more specific, I think growing up Dominican, you can relate to that. I mean, if you think about the average experience in the campo or in the Dominican Republic, you know what I mean? It's super community oriented. When you come over to somebody's house, if you're an adult, the first thing they offer is not even a cup of water, it's a cup of coffee, a cafecito. Um, and then we're big on culture. We're one of the most, I would say, rich cultures in the world, just like there are all around the world. But I think we have a really big diversity, you know what I mean? From the way people look to the way people talk to the kind of music we play to the way we dance. It's like really rich, to the food we have. It's very flavorful. It's very rich in so many ways
Yeah.
and in creativity. So that's kind of what motivates those three things. I think it's everything that's in front of us. I just think sometimes we don't really pause and slow down and just look at it like, wow, we really do have all these really special things. So that's why we focus on those three C's. And growing up between New York City and DR, that's kind of what my experience was.
Yeah, that's something I remember, when I was little, café con leche, right? I would drink the café con leche and I would dunk my very well buttered toast into my café con leche and I would have that for breakfast every morning. And it was a way of like connecting as a family before we all went on our days. And you're absolutely right. Like I can go into anybody's house at any moment, complete stranger, and the first thing they would say, "Ay, mi amor, ¿quieres un cafecito?" Right? Because that's a way of connecting and that's a way of like engaging in a conversation because there's a shared como te digo, como like a shared value system there. So yeah, I appreciate that it's universal, that we can all connect with. Um, one of the things that I really wanted to ask you is that, sometimes being an entrepreneur overall can be challenging. However, I have found, being an entrepreneur myself, that being an entrepreneur of color brings even more challenges than
Mhm.
one expected. And so I was curious, like as a man of color in the coffee industry, have there been like pivotal challenges or triumphs that have really fueled your mission to drive equity and diversity in the space?
I mean, I think the main thing is that I think if you really look at the coffee industry as a whole, the only color you see is really at the origin of where coffee is produced. So that's one. And then when you look at the ownership of coffee, it doesn't really look like me or you. So that's just plain observations. You could Google all the CEOs and founders. It's really, really easy information. One time, when I was getting the patent and the copyright for Don Carvajal, some of the information that I was trying to reserve, the lawyer was like, "Can you Google this information? Is it easily accessible? So maybe you shouldn't really reserve that." You know what I mean? And a lot of information is out there, so that's how I feel about being in coffee and being who I am and looking at what I look like. I think I'm the first one to do what I do, so I think there's just challenges of doing what I do. Are there challenges because of who I am and where I'm from? I'm pretty sure there are. Sometimes it's hard to identify those challenges because honestly, I think my biggest challenge is being young. I started my company at 21, 22. So I think people don't trust you, people don't believe in you, you don't have no experience, you don't have no resume, you have no capital. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's all these things, but are you gonna let that stop you? So it's like if you look at on the negative side, you're gonna have enough reasons to not do it. So you should just look at what can I do that hasn't been done before, and then you just approach it that way. Because if it's about reasons to give up and it be challenging, that's all that's in the world right now. So
Yeah, no, you're right. So I know that you began your journey as like a university term project, right? The University of Rochester. Shout out. I have lots of friends that went there. Um, can you paint a picture of that project and what made you realize that it had the potential to grow into something larger?
I've always liked entrepreneurship. I've always liked entrepreneurship. I don't know how to pinpoint it, but I did the one of the best things I did was intern at a bunch of places and realized I really didn't like most jobs. And I really hated sitting at a desk all day, which I don't mind doing for X amount of hours in a day, but I like moving around. I like traveling the world. I like meeting people. I like investing into communities. That's just kind of the things that come with doing what I do in coffee. Um, it just happened, you know what I mean? I don't really know what hit me. It just kind of organically happened, from seeing my mom drink coffee every day to just seeing how the culture doesn't really have a brand representing it in the coffee world. And then being from the campo, moving to New York City, and then realizing there's no real representation here for a lot of products, including coffee, sugar cane, brown sugar, honey, chocolate. Like in DR, that all that stuff is really good. Avocados are really good. All you hear is people talk about how good stuff is back home and how much they wish they had it here. So a lot of the times people tell you what the needs are. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just gotta really just shut up and listen. So I think for me as an immigrant, a lot of things I wish I had here, and then coffee was one of those. Not that I was really a big coffee drinker as a kid, because I moved here when I was 8, but you just listen to the community, and I know that in DR we have so many good things, from the people to the products. We have great agricultural products, and I just didn't feel like it was represented here.
Yeah.
And growing up between DR and New York, I just something was missing, and then that was something that just hit me, and then everything just came into fruition. Just thinking of my grandfather. If I ever made a brand that had to do anything with agriculture, I would put this name on it, and my grandfather, blah blah blah, because he was a farmer. But the project came about because it was a marketing project, and we had to create a business plan and a marketing plan, and then I just had this idea that I was kind of like just playing with in my head, and then I asked my professor if I could do the project based off this instead of something imaginary. And then he was like, yeah, if your team is cool with it, then yeah. And then it kind of organically just happened. And then the term ended. And then I had a marketing plan and a business plan. And I felt really good about it. I was like, man, there's no way this won't work. And then it kind of developed into one thing went into one other. And then, you come up with a plan. It's like driving, you're on the highway, you might miss your exit, but your GPS got to reroute. So that's how I look at pivoting. You got to pivot and just keep it pushing and figure out what the next best route is. And that's kind of how we got here and how we built the project out.
So, I mean, that's just absolutely incredible. I'm curious about, as an entrepreneur, I know that sometimes those first investors are critical. How did you go about like, identifying those first investors? Was it family? Was it friends? Was it like, how how did it all happen? How did it all come together?
I've never been the biggest fan of investors because I feel like when you have a vision and people just want to cash out, your vision might be not your vision anymore at some point.
Mm.
So I just really number one, I got a grant from my school because they had like an entrepreneurship center, the Mark and Entrepreneurship Center, and then they had like a $500 grant that you could apply for to create a project or go to a conference that's beneficial for you as a business student or for a business. And then I got that. They gave me like $300, which was helpful, just
Yeah.
it's a helpful $300, you know what I mean? When you don't have anything,
When
when
you're
you
a
have
student, $300, you're
yeah,
like, yes.
yeah, when you have zero, $300,
Yeah.
you get creative. You got to get really creative, and with
And that's
300,
our people, though. Our people know how to be creative with like
yeah,
little.
yeah. So you do that, and then you get a little secured credit card, $500. You max that out, and then you do some magic with that, $800. You could do magic with that. So I started the company with about $800, and then that includes filing the company and getting coffee, getting some labels and bags, and roasting it locally,
Yeah.
and then just flip that again and again and again and again and again, and it's just still going.
Yeah.
That's how it is. You just got to be creative. We got to have vision and a dream and be creative. Sometimes you can have a great product, but if the story's not great, it might not go far. But then if the story's great and the product is not, then it's not gonna be
Right.
sustainable.
There has to be a nice balance. Absolutely. So I have a couple of questions. One, I'm curious about, I want to ask you about your grandfather, but I also want to just ask you directly, like, what makes Dominican coffee like truly special in your eyes? And how do you aim to share that story of its uniqueness?
I think every country has special coffee. I think every coffee has special coffee. I mean,
Mm.
every country has special coffee. I've had great coffee in Puerto Rico. I've had great coffee in Colombia. I've had great coffee in Chile. I've had amazing coffee in DR. You know what I mean? And I'm really one of those that really thinks there's special coffee everywhere. When those polls come out, oh, the best coffee in the world is in X country, I really disagree all the time. Because if I really had $1 billion and I was like, I'm gonna find the best cup of coffee in every single country, I could do that. You know what I mean? And I could make sure every single cup from every country is whatever. But I think DR is special just as a community. I think we've come a long way. If you really look up the history of coffee in DR and in Haiti and how it got to the island back in the day, it's gone through a lot of changes and adversities. And then if you look at something called roya, which is a rust disease that would happen to the leaves of coffee and it'll drop the flowers and stuff, people went through that not too long ago.
Yeah.
And they had to replant trees and everything. A lot of people shied away from growing coffee because of this disease. It was like the COVID, but for coffee.
Mhm.
And I like that a lot of farmers overcame that, or they kept going. Some of them gave up, some didn't. And I just think DR has special soil. It's an island profile. It's the perfect climate on the equator, for that kind of stuff. You have mountains like Jarabacoa. That's a pretty high point in DR. You have Pico Duarte, which is, if I'm not mistaken, the highest point in the Caribbean. So
Oh,
it's it,
okay.
it's
Uh-huh.
it's a perfect environment, for coffee. Just like you have Hawaii, which is known for their coffee. You have Puerto Rico, which is known for their coffee, but they don't produce as much as we like for them to. All these great places, all Cuban coffee, this, that. You know what I mean? Like if you really look at it, they all have a lot in common. So it's like really finding those similarities. But I think DR is special. I think the most special part is the people behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's space for all of us in the market, right? That's great. So tell me a little bit about, the name and logo of your coffee, right? I know that it's to honor your grandfather. Can you tell, our listeners a little bit about him and why he became the heart of your brand's identity?
I think we all have a Don Corojo in our lives. You know what I mean? I think it's special to all of us. Like I don't have to boast about my grandfather for you to get it because I'm sure you have one too. We all have one, you know. And just hearing all the stories about him growing up. I met him when I was very young, but the stories I heard throughout life was always really good stuff, you know. And I just love the life that they lived. Sometimes I like to just go back in time, you know, whether it's playing a record player or just looking at art from that time or just music, you know, like when you do a holiday party, you realize how Dominican you are, you know what I mean? Because all they play is throwback songs from a different time and it just brings you back to their time, you know? So I've always admired the life they lived and the stuff they did for their family.
Yeah.
The I've always just wanted to be like him, you know? So I've always loved the idea of marketing him and telling his story. So
Yeah. And
that's it.
remind our listeners where did your grandpa spend like most of his time? Where was he?
En Bani is that's Bahías Bani is a campo. In Bani, it's like closer towards like a mountainous part of
Yeah.
Bani. That's where I was born, and then I was raised there for a little bit, and then I moved to New York.
How was that transition for you? You know, going to the States. I mean, we have that in common, although I was born in New York, but then I came here when I was 6 months, stayed
Mhm.
till the age of 7, and then moved from here to New York. So for me, it was like shocking. How was it for you?
I think it was shocking. Like I really thought we were just going to another town or somewhere. Like I wasn't sure what a plane was. You know what I mean? Like I was just like, where are we going?
Yeah.
But I was just excited. You know what I mean? You're with your family, so like that you just trust what's happening because you're in comfort. You know, you're in safety. And to me, it was cool when I got here. You know, the TV didn't go off ever. You know, so in DR we had a rule. It was like I could watch cartoons until the lights went out, and the lights always went out like 9. So then that was like our thing. And then here I was like, oh, so the lights don't go out, so that means I don't gotta go to bed, right? But it was funny because you know, like now there was no light issues, there was no water issues no more. And I feel like it wasn't so bad of a transition because I was young. You know what I mean? Like it was easy to learn, I
Yeah.
think. I did have a hard time reading and writing and stuff like that because I didn't know how to read or write when I was 8 in DR.
Okay.
So that was interesting to learn a new language and also learn how to read and write in English and in Spanish. So that was pretty interesting. But but I learned pretty quickly. I think when you're 8 years old, 7, 9, like you're kind of like a sponge. You know, it's you have nothing to worry about. So you pick up a lot of things. You know, you watch cartoons, manzana, apple. Okay, I see what's going on here. You know what I mean? Like it just you pick it up quicker. So. Looking back right now in this very moment, I think it was pretty smooth. But it has its challenges, you know what I mean? Like inevitably it does. But looking back right now, I guess it wasn't so bad because of my age.
Yeah. And here you are, now an entrepreneur.
Yeah, the most interesting part was being the weird kid. Because as an immigrant, you're always a weird kid. Always the weird kid who wears the off-brand stuff from El Mundo
Oh,
and
sí,
all
claro.
that, and your parents buy you oversized stuff so you could grow into it because you can't afford clothes every season. So that was a little weird, but outside of that, everything was smooth. I
Everything
was
was good.
definitely the outlier at some point,
Yeah.
but that I'm the outlier right now, so I guess that's just a part of the journey. You know what I mean?
That's
So
just who you are. You're an outlier. Own it, right? And you do. You do so well. So Hector, tell me what I'm curious about like how the process all works, right? So can you take us on a journey of your coffee from like the farms here in República Dominicana to like a freshly brewed cup in someone's hand? Can you walk us through that?
it's quite the journey. So most of the coffee is produced in Jarabacoa and Barahona. A
My
few hundred.
people, paraoneros.
There you go. So it gets bought from a few hundred producers in the Dominican Republic in those two parts. Then it gets processed for the most part in Jarabacoa. From the mountain, it gets processed down there. Um, Takes either 2 weeks or 8 months, depending on the coffee. Then from there, it gets put in a container. Well, it gets put into sacks, container. Then it gets brought to a port. Then from that port, it lands here in New Jersey. where it lands in Miami, depending where it's being imported into. Then from there, it'll go to a warehouse where they store probably most of the coffee in the East Coast region. It's a huge terminal. And then from there it goes to the roastery in Long Island City. Then it gets roasted. Then from there it goes to the coffee shop that we have, or to Whole Foods or Amazon, or straight to the consumer. They buy from our site. But that's typically the journey. Some other coffees, at least most coffees, have a really long journey
Mhm.
because they go through so many hands. They go through brokers and third parties and importers. So most coffees trade about 15 hands or 15 different companies before it gets to a lot of people.
Yeah,
It's just like it's a really huge commodity. But the idea is to really single it down and just cut a lot of people out of the process, because the more people involved, the less the farmer gets. You know, the people who get the least amount of money out of the 15 people, which is crazy.
yeah,
Uh, but that's just how the industry has been built over years, you know. So it's like, how do we change the system now, and how do we try to do more good for the people who feel this industry? Because without the farmers, like it's just not happening, you know.
yeah. So that to me goes back to, how we started the conversation about how you are integrating like your values. And they are political values in ensuring that, the farmers that are growing, the coffee beans and doing the work get what they deserve, like the value. So that's awesome. Yeah. So as our conversation is gonna, come to a close in a little bit, I, and you mentioned this, right? Kind of like on the down low, but I really want to congratulate you on, and your team on the recent milestones, your coffee's presence in Whole Foods and your new cafe in Irvington, New York. What has been the community's reaction to like, authentic Dominican coffee and food? Like tell me, what's that like?
I think most people haven't been used to the combination of specialty coffee and Dominican food, at least
Mm.
Dominican inspired food. So it's something different. I think most people have taken it in a very positive way. I think most people appreciate it. Um, I like doing stuff that, if it's done before, you know, then I'd rather let somebody who started it just do the originality of it. You know what I mean? But I started it because I thought it was a concept that didn't exist, and everybody has definitely showed a lot of love and support. And we just want to keep it going, you know, keep it growing, keep it going, and make it sustainable for us as a business, and make it sustainable for the world, you know, to a certain extent. You know, you can only keep scaling so much, you know. So coffee is a very limited commodity. It grows out of the floor, the soil. You know what I mean? So it's a process. You know, we don't make it in a lab. It's a very human involved thing. So the climate change is real. You know what I mean? So it's something great. The world loves it. You know, but it's like, how do you just grow and try to make it practical for the world? You know, and
Yeah,
for
and
everybody.
sustainable. Yeah, yeah, claro.
It's really tough. It's really tough.
How often do you find yourself here?
Like once or twice a year, just happens organically. I'm actually going next month, February, to Jarabacoa. That's gonna be fun.
Well, I'm in town. Now you have someone else you can come visit.
There you go.
That'd be amazing. Um, so tell me about your vision for Don Carvajal Coffee. Are there any dream projects or milestones that you're excited to pursue?
It's interesting because I would say like 6 years ago, I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do in the next 5, 6 years, and that's kind of where I'm at in a way. So it's interesting because like years ago, I wanted to be where I'm at right now, and I never thought about what's next. I never thought about the next 5 years. I just wanted to be here. So for this year, my motto was more like just really just maintaining and making it sustainable, taking care of who I have on the team, taking care of the company, taking care of the farmers, just taking care of my ecosystem. That's really, we got here, cool. How do we stay here next year? How do we grow? How do we help the world? that's kind of where I'm at. You know what I mean? So I'm living my dream right now. Sometimes you got to slow down and just take in where you're at, because we just want to just keep going and going and going. And I'm kind of at a space where I just want to slow down.
Well,
That's
enjoy it. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know what the next 5 years look like. I think we're good right now. And honestly, a lot of things happen very organically. Even how I do business is very like human. Sometimes I meet somebody and it's like, oh, you're kind of cool. Oh, you're kind of cool too. We love what you do. I love what you do too. You know what I mean? And it just kind of just happens that way. And even things like Whole Foods or some of our clients, like they just happen organically. Sometimes it's people in the community who think we have something dope and we love what they do. So it's about finding people who have similar values, or just understanding of what it is, and people who understand what this is worth, because to some people some things aren't worth it. It's like people who complain about a $5 cup of coffee with a bag of Gucci. It's like you got to pick one, you know what I mean? And we love Gucci because we serve coffee at their office, but it's like understanding that there's different luxuries.
Yeah.
Some people find coffee as a luxury that they enjoy. Some people find the handbag that's a luxury they enjoy. Like I love buying a smoothie at the gym. It's not the best use of my money, but I personally love buying a smoothie at the gym. I don't know what to tell you.
It fills your
You know
cup.
what I mean? I'll make my coffee at home, but I would love to buy a smoothie at the gym. That's just a luxury that I like. You know what I mean? So everybody has different luxuries.
Yeah.
And it's understanding what that is for a lot of people and finding community within all these things.
Yeah. So, Hector, I am really grateful. Thank you for sharing your story with us. It's really inspiring to me to see someone blend passion and culture and community so seamlessly in the way that you do. And I'm wondering, before we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to share with our listeners or any advice for aspiring entrepreneurs, whether, back in the States or here on the island?
It's funny. I feel like I always say the same stuff, but I've had many ideas, and I think there are such things as bad ideas. Like that's just you got to be okay with that. Like I've had bad ideas, and I've failed at stuff. Like failure is normal.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. People fail in business. People fail in relationships. People fail as fathers and mothers and sons and students. We all fail. You know what I mean? Failure is normal. You just gotta just slow down, take that, learn from it. But if you keep failing at the same thing, maybe that's a concern. But we failure is normal. You know what I mean? I think people are so caught up, and if you look at social media, we don't post failures, we just post the victories, and that's just the way the world is set up. But failure is normal, and I think people don't say that enough. There are such things as bad ideas. When you have an idea, sometimes 99.9% of people won't believe in it because it's not their idea, it's your idea. And you're the one who has to make it come to life, just like me. People thought I was crazy when I did this idea in the beginning. It was like, and now it's like, man, that was such a great idea, man. But it's like, it's so easy to believe in it now because it's executed.
Right.
I mean, it's 6, 7 years of sacrificing, and now it makes sense, right? Because Whole Foods it's in Whole Foods, right? Of course, we trust it. Oh, they have a coffee shop, of course. You know what I mean? Oh, they serve XYZ companies. Oh, like, okay. You know what I mean? So some people need an external form of validation for them to believe in something. So sometimes you just gotta just keep doing it and just believe in yourself, because if it's you trying to find validation from other people, then you're never gonna find that. And you're never gonna do it. So you gotta just kind of just do it. That's at least just my personal experience. I don't really like to give people advice too much. I always say any stocks advice or lawyers, go talk to a stockbroker or a lawyer. But that's how I look at entrepreneurship and personal journey, at least from my own personal experience. That's how I approached it.
Yeah. No, very wise. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those words. And thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you for having me.